Hey y'all, happy Sunday. Got it right, Russ. Uh Hope everybody's doing well. Got a special guest today, so real short countdown timer. My guest today is Scott from M&S Woodworks. How you doing today, Scott?
I'm good, Mark. How are you, man?
I think I'm going to make it. It was touch and go earlier, but I think I'm going to make it. It's one of those weeks. We were talking behind the scenes. I still need a day between Saturday and Sunday just to decompress. But hey, we do this for the fun of it. What the heck?
That's right.
Before we get going today, I do need to give a shout out to the sponsor of my website, marklindsaycnc.com. And I do this every week and I do it for a reason. And that's because he's just good at what he does. Steve is the man, the myth, the legend. He's out in the chat right now. He's already posted up a link for Scott's YouTube channel, just, on top of it. And he can do things like this for you as well. Now, if you're looking to explore the possibilities of a website, maybe you want to get out of that cycle of paying another website to host your products or talk about your services and then pay a commission on top of sales, what have you. The best way to do it is with your own website. Steve can hook you up with a web store. Uh, he can hook you up with a print on demand company. If you're looking to start creating merch, t-shirts, baseball caps, hoodies, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, whatever, he can hook you up with all of that. He's very, very reasonably priced, very competitively priced as well. And you'll wonder how he manages to get away with charging as little as he does. Do yourself a favor if you're even thinking about it. Head over to harneilmedia.com. There's a link in every video and live stream on this channel down in the description, and it's that way for a reason. Get over there and hit that contact us link and have a chat with Steve. He'll take care of you. Believe me. That's Harneil Media, link down in the description. And thank you, Steve. Thank you for what you do. I appreciate it. So, let's get into a little bit of a topic here. First of all, let's for the folks who don't know you, for the folks who've never met you before, I bumped into Scott on YouTube when I was just bouncing around, not knowing what to do, not knowing what to watch. And I ran across this video, a redneck's guide to V-carve inlays. And brother, I got to tell you, I was hooked from there. I like your style. I like the way you present. I like the way you edit. I liked everything about it. And like I said, I've been hooked ever since and been a faithful follower. What? Oops, I thought I turned that off. Sorry there. Um, what got you into woodworking in general, but CNC in particular?
Honest to goodness, years ago, I had kind of welded a little bit. I'm not a professional welder. I certainly don't post my welds online. That's certain death if you've ever seen those comments. But um, I had was of the mind that I wanted to have a plasma table. And looking at the prices, if anybody's looked at plasma tables, they're about as much as a car, you know. And feeling handy, I thought, I think I can build one of those. So, but I didn't know anything about CNC. So the first thing I did is I bought a little small 3D printer, same concept. Bought it under, CNC is not quantum science. So it's pretty easy to figure out pretty quick. But still, the I was a little nervous about building a plasma table, so I bought a cheap CNC machine, or what I thought was cheap at the time, a Shapeoko.
Mhm.
And honest to goodness, I bought that thing just as a trial, just like the 3D printer, to learn and understand. But when I cut my first piece of wood, I was hooked.
Yeah.
You know, it was, and quite honestly, the first thing I did was cut a round pocket on a 2x4, and I'm like, what a great time to be alive, you know, that we can do stuff like this. And just playing around, and I started out making small things, whatnots, coasters and whatnot, but I would see things specifically. I guess that's what my more popular videos, what their success have been, is the V-carve inlays.
Mhm.
And I saw broing wood, and I'm like, I've got to do that. I've got to learn how to do that. And so if it wasn't for YouTube, I know I wouldn't be here right now, or know what I know. I just watched every video I could find on inlays, forums, whatever I could, grasp at the time. And there wasn't a whole lot out there. It really wasn't when I started doing it. And so a lot of what I know is hard knocks,
Yeah.
lots of failures. I joked on one of my videos that I've had some pretty expensive bonfires in my backyard. It hurts your feeling when you're throwing $50 worth of black walnut, in the fire. But it's a good lesson.
If you
But
learn.
if you learn it,
If you
indeed,
learn.
indeed. So, yeah, that's just it. It was an undiscovered, unassuming thing. I never thought I would be, into woodworking, or working with wood in any way, short of, nailing 3 or 4 2x4s together. That
Yeah.
was the extent of my experience up to that point, and here we are.
So you've been doing this for about how long then?
I bought my first CNC machine 7 years ago.
7 years ago. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And you still have that machine, or have
No,
you
I
given
sold it. What I kind of knew that was outgrowing that particular machine after about a year, specifically when I started doing the inlays, because Shapeoko is a good machine. It really is. But it has its place, and I was asking more of it than what it was capable of giving me. And I realized pretty quick I needed, a ball screw driven machine, a little bit more power. And so I was shopping around and come across a Onefinity that I use. And so I sold the Shapeoko to partly fund the Onefinity. So I've never had 2 CNC machines at one time. I don't really have a need for it. Don't have the room in my shop for it, but,
Yeah, I hear you.
but since I've had the Onefinity, and this isn't a plug for them or anything, I know there's just as good or others out there. But it's served me well. I've been happy with it.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. A lot of people will say to buy your last machine first. It's real easy to spend other people's money, but I kind of have an issue with that uh, thought process, because it's real easy to get in over your head by spending thousands of dollars and then be standing there looking at it going, okay, now what do I do?
It's a difficult decision, because you nailed it just then. When I bought that Shapeoko, I knew pretty quick, once I got the fundamentals learned, that I was going to outgrow this machine pretty quick. And I was kicking myself that I didn't go ahead and spend the money on a higher level machine. But you don't know. You
Yeah.
don't know. And I know we've all seen, posts on Facebook groups or whatever. Folks will come out of pocket to buy the machine that they think that they'll keep forever, only for 6 months later to lose interest in it, and now they're selling it for half what they paid
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to call. It really is.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've seen too many people put their entire CNC systems up for sale because they think it's over their head.
Yeah.
They think they don't get it, when, that's one of the things that got me into making videos. Was a fellow that lives about 90 miles away from me, so just far enough away I couldn't visit every day. He just knew that this was way over his head. And ended up selling it for a criminally low price, and I thought that's ridiculous. So
Well, I want to say something. I mean, you blew a little smoke my way a while ago. I'm gonna blow some your way. You're my hero,
oh,
because
wow.
even before I knew you,
Mhm,
you know, I visited your channel. I watched your videos on Understand the Vetric and different things.
mhm.
I would be betting to bet big money that you have saved a lot of folks from selling their machines, just because you know, so plainly, you know, explained how to use VCAR, because that's the biggest thing, right? Is the
Mhm.
software and
I
understanding it.
I
So
think so.
you're a pillar, in my
Well,
opinion, you know, in this community. And for the record, when you first contacted me, you mentioned a while ago, I thought, you know, Elvis had contacted me. I mean, I was like starstruck, you know. So
no, 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 no.
thank you for what you do. I don't think you realize how important you are, you know.
Well, I do appreciate that, and if I have helped somebody kind of cut through the confusion and see that this isn't over their head. There are no secrets. There is no magic. That if I can do this, anybody can do this. So if I have saved anybody the frustration and maybe wanting to sell their machines, then my work is done, because that's what I wanted to do. I want to show folks that uh, everybody, if I can, I'm serious. If I can figure this out, everybody can figure this out.
Absolutely.
So, because believe me, what's the other one I say? 10 years ago, I couldn't spell CNC. Now I've built 4 of them. So,
Well, you know, a lot of things I see too, and this is not something you can teach, is patience.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of
Well,
folks don't have the patience that they need, and this, as we all know, requires a ton of it. You know, um,
well,
you're not going to get there overnight.
no, it is a journey. It's not a destination. That is for
Right.
sure. But uh, I've heard my wife is a knitter, and I've heard people tell her, "Boy, I just don't have the patience to sit there and do something." She will stop what she's doing, take off her glasses, look up, and say, "It doesn't take patience to do something you love." And I'm like, you know what? I can agree with that. And
That's profound. Yeah.
this is fun to me.
Yeah.
So I just have a blast with it. But this isn't about me. Thank you very much. But this isn't about me. This is about, I wanted to kind of pry into your mind a little bit and see where you come up with some of the ideas that you come up with. Because I'm telling you, folks, if you've not been over to Scott's channel, yes, he's built chess sets, and yes, he's done V-carve inlays and things like that. That bassinet you made is absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
That is, I mean, I don't know that I can count high enough to tell you how many times I said wow while I was watching that video. That is gorgeous work, and I just wish I
Thank
could blow this up a little bit. But the coffee table was another one. Where do these ideas come from?
you. You know, the
That's
coffee table was an accident, actually. You know, if you remember a few videos back, I was blessed. I got sponsored, and and that's another thing too. I never wanted to steer my channel away from the CNC or the woodworking, but I had an opportunity. I was contacted by Momport Laser, and they wanted to sponsor me, and we negotiated, and they offered me that laser, and I jumped on it, because in the few minutes that I was, or a few days rather, that I was deciding on if I wanted to do it, because honest to goodness, there was a part of me, regardless of how nice it was, there was part of me that apprehensive about taking it on, you know. But watching YouTube again, you know, seeing what could be done with it, and how I wanted the challenge of trying to mesh the two together, the CNC and the laser. So one thing with that being said, one thing that I'd always seen was the mandala art is
Mhm.
what I cut out in the middle. And I thought, man, I want to do that. I think that would be beautiful. And my first thought was, as it was meant to be, was wall art, to put it in a frame and hang it on the wall. Well,
Yeah.
as I do, I over engineer things. And when I got to realizing how big and heavy that this wall art was going to be, I thought, my daughter lives in an apartment. If we hung that on the wall, they'd probably pull the damn wall down, right? So I thought, well, what to do? And I thought, I'll make it into a table. I'll put some table legs on it. I mean, that's a really simple fix for this dilemma that I have found myself in, And a little insight to folks that's never made a YouTube channel. You can set out at the beginning of the making of the video to go one direction, only to go 90 degrees one way or the other, right in the middle of it. And then with the magic of editing, you make it seem like it was on purpose. So this is full transparency. That video didn't start out to be a coffee table. It started out to be wall art. And it apparently folks like it. It's one of my more popular videos, but I was very proud of it,
And you should be, because that thing is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, and it's several. How many layers was that again?
Nine, I believe. I believe it was 9 total.
Yeah. Well, it's fantastic. I gotta say, I absolutely loved that. And that was when you got the big laser, and I'm like, well, I want to play too,
Yeah. Mark, I see Jim Brown asked a question. If I'm doing laser inlays, the answer is yes. I have learned how to do some laser inlays, and I'm hoping to include that in my next video. My next video is going to be another V-carve inlay technique, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, again, like I just said, you never know where the video is going to end up. I'm hoping if it works out, I'm going to include a massive laser inlay section to it. So
okay, well, great. I can't wait for it. I can't wait for it. I like that kind of thing. So to my first question, where do these ideas come from? Is it something you see? Is it something that just pops into your head and wakes you up in the middle of the night? You got to get up and write it down? Or
admittedly, one of my shortcomings is I don't have the imagination of thinking up something from scratch. I wish I did. I have a deep respect for folks that do. But I would dare say, to be fair to myself and to you, probably 75% of what I've made, I will see something that I like, either in a picture, in a magazine, online, YouTube, and then I'll go, yeah, but if I would do it this way. And so I'm usually several degrees separated from my original. What I saw is generally where my ideas come up with. Every now and again, I'll stumble across something, the coffee table, that is, I can call my own, but admittedly, it's far and few between for original thought-provoking ideas. I wish I did.
I'm kind of in the same boat in that I will sit and try to figure out, I want to do something different. I want to do something different. Then off in the corner, I see something shiny and it's like, squirrel. Oh, that's cool. I wonder if I could do that on the CNC router. I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to do something. I've got probably 1,000 files that I will never cut. I just want to know, could I draw it?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, now Jim Brown has a follow-up question. Are you using metal tape for the veneers?
Oh, in regard to the laser inlays? Yes, indeed. That was a method I saw.
I saw that one too, I think.
I think it's ProTac. I can't remember.
Tomek?
No, it's a laser manufacturer.
Yeah, I think
good grief. One of them, anyway. This guy, he releases these videos on behalf of the company. Yeah. And he does these little projects, and I come across one where he took a piece of aluminum tape.
Yeah.
And the aluminum tape is, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch thick, if that. And you actually take wood veneer and tape it to that, and that's actually what you cut the plug or the inlay from. Trotec, there, attaboy.
Yeah, that was the one.
And cut the veneer out, the negative in the veneer, and then whatever your base is, you just engrave a deep enough pocket into it that you can tape the metal tape on top, and the tape it kind of helps keep it all together, because
Yeah.
man, the detail, the absolute crazy microscopic detail that you get with this laser, you have to have something to hold it all together that you can get it glued in. But when that was another thing, I had a Broenwood moment when I saw that. I went, I've got to try that,
Yeah.
and so I'm actually going to try multiple inlays using the laser. I've tried it a couple of times. It's tedious, but that's my goal.
Well, now, if you were to give advice to somebody who was trying to do something they saw you do, be it a V-carve inlay or this coming up laser inlay video, if they see your video and they go, man, I got to try that too, what advice would you give? What
I think
what advice do you wish you would have had when you were trying it for the first
well,
time?
I wish there had been resources around when I started. I liked it. And here's the thing, I have been open and free about how my settings are. There's one video in particular how I manipulate my vectors and whatnot.
Mm.
And I haven't received any death threats yet from the other big inlay guys, but I quite honestly believe that there's some parts of it that they intentionally kept secret, that they did, to kind of give them the edge over everybody. And I remember how aggravating that was, because I wanted to know 5 minutes ago how to do this. And like I said, it took me sometimes months to figure out just the smallest things to get a successful inlay. So to answer, with that being said, and to answer your question, there is much more knowledge now on YouTube. Not just myself, but there's several other folks that do inlays, and they're willing to give the secrets away, for lack of a better description. Just research, watch YouTube videos. That's 50% of the battle. The other 50% is hard knocks. There's nothing that I or anybody could teach you. You've just got to go out there and cut some wood. And, because you could write in a phone book thick worth of description and instructions on how to do it. It take forever, and it's just, I've helped so many people in the past. And the biggest thing, I will give them they'll ask me questions and I will answer those questions, but I will forget to volunteer important stuff to them, only for them to come back and say, hey, my inlay failed because of this. And I'm like, I forgot to tell you about that. There's just so many variables that can go wrong or go right. But you just got to learn them yourself. I think I saw somebody comment just a second ago, it's the hard knock. They agreed with me. The hard knocks is the best teacher,
Yeah. Because you hit one point, the nail right on the head, in that there are so many variables. It's real easy to say, use this speed, use this plunge rate, use this spindle RPM, and use this bit. But unless you are set up on a machine that's absolutely identical, there's going to be differences. There's going to be differences in material. Heck, maple, for example, I've had 3 different densities in the same 24-inch long piece of material.
Yeah, there's not a small window for settings. It can be great. And you mentioned the wood density. If you figure the difference between maple and black walnut, black walnut is soft enough that you could plow right through it with no issues, but maple, on the other hand, is not. And I have worked with some woods that's hard as concrete, purple heart, bloodwood. I mean, those are some of the more denser woods I've ever worked with, and you can break a bit no matter what your speeds are if you're not careful, But yeah, the bit when I posted that video a couple months ago of how I manipulate my vectors, I think that's something that's never been talked about. And the whole reason why I I posted it is because everybody wants to know their bit settings and your feeds and speeds and the cut depths and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Those conversations are everywhere, but nobody talks about the back of the house when you're sitting
Mm-hmm.
in front of the computer, and that half of that is how you create. You got to make those vectors right. Your machine can be perfect, it can be dead on accurate, but if what you're putting into in the machine hasn't been polished, then you'll
Mm-hmm.
still fail. So
Yeah, Pete Bune agrees with you 100%. Your vector manipulation video was awesome.
thank you, Pete.
Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think that is why so many people um, are just. I think it's that lack of information, those little things that people miss, the little subtleties, are why people get so frustrated with this process at times. Because you can do things the exact same way as somebody else did, but if there's one little piece of information is missing, you can have a completely different result.
Well, I've had some trolls comment on some of my videos how I'm not a woodworker, and that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, and it honestly doesn't hurt my feelings. But what does aggravate me is that they don't realize the time and the effort that goes into to making anything on a CNC machine. It's not a Hewlett Packard printer that you take out and set it on a desk and plug it up
Yeah.
and hit cut.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a level of imagination. It takes a
Mm-hmm.
level of understanding mechanics, and then you got to be techie. If you're
Mm-hmm.
case in point, when I sold my Shapeoko right before I
Mm-hmm.
bought my 150, I actually had a guy that owned a cabinet shop here in town. I told him I was going to sell it, and he had seen some of the stuff that I had made before, and he was just beside himself. I want that machine. I
Mm-hmm.
want it. I'm buying it. I'm like, okay, man, it's yours. So he said, but I'm gonna come over to the house and pick it up, and then I want you to, if you will, cut a few things for me, and so I can get an idea how to operate it. I'm like, sure thing. So he comes to the house. He brings his pickup truck. I'm thinking the CNC machine is sold, and I was just going to carve out his name, his business name, and just a
Mm-hmm.
simple V carve.
Yeah.
And when I opened up the computer and opened up Vectric and then started typing everything, it was like I was pointing a gun in his face. He was
Mm-hmm.
scared to death. Whoa, I didn't know you had to use a computer for this stuff. I'm like, yeah, man. I
Mm-hmm.
said, that's you've got to tell it what to do, and this is how you translate that. And he
Mm-hmm.
backed out of the deal. I said, how
Whoa.
did you think this stuff worked, man? But he did, which I no hard feelings, I
Mm-hmm.
understood. But
Yeah.
he backed out of the deal, and he actually gave me some compliments. He said, I didn't know it was like that, man. He said that takes a higher level of understanding that I'm capable of understanding. That he produces beautiful cabinets. I mean, he's
Mm-hmm.
one of the more successful shops here where I live. But it was just like we were talking about quantum physics,
Mm-hmm.
and he run from it.
Yeah.
So anybody that does this, don't let the naysayers get you down. You absolutely, the efforts that you make with this are notable to me,
Yeah.
and a lot of folks.
Yeah.
It's just another tool in your shop is all it is.
Absolutely. I think of it as an employee that's never late, doesn't come in hungover, and gives me no drama. You know, it can be cutting something while I'm sanding something or finishing something or planning something else, you know, absolutely. And I say that as a woodworker with over 50 years. Okay. So anybody tells you you're not a woodworker, ban, delete. I ain't got time for you. I don't have
And
time for you.
I like them because I'll actually pin the comments and I let my loyal followers, my good friends on YouTube, rip
Yeah.
them to shreds, and they
Yeah.
usually do.
I
So
don't have any patience for that. Now there's a difference in good-natured ribbing and just being a jerk. I don't know if you know John Heights. I build it on YouTube. I build
hmm,
it .ca on the web.
mm-hmm,
He and I have been bouncing back and forth, joking with one another for quite a while. He made a whole bunch of push sticks, just a push stick like that, that type of push stick. and he sent me one with his "I build it" logo on it, and then right here he wrote, "For CNC guys, this side down." You know, now that's fun. Okay,
Yeah, I agree.
I can deal with that. So what I did was, I probably shouldn't have, but that you see the chrome silhouette of the reclining woman on the mud flap of semi trucks out
Yes,
on the interstate.
my
I
my day
made
job's transportation. I've seen that for most of my life. Yeah.
imagine that you're holding her head, and I made him a push stick shaped like that and sent it to him.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
and he didn't feature it in a video, but in one shot of the first video he shot after I sent it to him, it's kind of sitting over next to the rip fence with my sticker on it, so I couldn't deny it.
That's awesome.
That kind of thing is fun.
Yeah.
you know the teasing back and forth and what have you. That's the old jokes between the drummers and the bass players. What do you call a bass player with no girlfriend, homeless, that kind of thing. um, it, it's just and the bass player telling the drummer, never buy more drums than you can haul to the pawn shop in one trip, that kind of thing. I like that, but if you're just being a jerk, I ain't got no time for you. you know
Well, there's a lot of folks, I don't know. Yeah. They need to do things like that because I
hmm
guess they're so miserable in their own life. They got to talk
hmm
down to somebody to make them feel self superior. And in
hmm
these days, I mean, there's lots of keyboard warriors out there. There's
Oh
lots of
yeah.
stuff posted in the comment section that you wouldn't dare say to somebody's face,
Oh,
you know,
yeah. Oh
especially
yeah.
down here where I live, you know. So,
Oh yeah.
um, so I just leave it up at that. It's just,
Yeah.
it
Really, I get it.
the bark's worse than the bite to me. So,
hmm I just don't have time for negativity, so I not
right.
don't even care. Now, friend of the channel and channel member Sargon wants to know: do you use the same graphics for raster and vector cut? Again, I'm sure this is about the laser inlays, or do you slightly adjust for the laser curve?
No, you don't adjust laser curve at all. You actually, it is so close to doing a V carve inlay technique. It's not even funny. Um, you if you're just going to, like my logo, I've done my logo more than anything, but
Mhm.
I will engrave my logo. Now, what I will do is I will set the power to a specific power. And again, you've got whatever the power of your laser is or whatever wood you're cutting into is going to be different. But, generally what I have measured, at least what I've bought, the veneer that I've bought, um, the veneer, and forgive me, I can't even think of what the measurement is. It's damn thin, so
Mhm.
I'll take my calibers and see what that thickness is. And then I will do test cuts on engraving to cut that deep into the wood,
Okay.
whatever, which is paper thin, obviously. Right.
Yeah.
And I'll use my calipers to measure that. And once I get close to that, then you just cut the same exact thing, except flip it like a mirror image and put yourself a boundary around it, just like a V-carve inlay, and cut it out. And it's
Mhm.
actually easier than on the CNC because you don't have to worry about bit or feeds and speeds or anything.
Mhm.
That's incredibly simple to do. So
Okay. Okay.
no other settings required.
No other settings required. Yeah, I noticed a comment up here. Somebody saying they didn't know if there it is. Don't know if my 7-watt laser will cut the veneer. Do
Yeah,
you go ahead?
you may have to make a couple of passes, but I would bet you that it would. Matter of fact, I've got a 130-watt CO2 laser, and I still make two passes on my inlay cut. The first one is actually cut the veneer, and the second pass is to burn away any residue that builds up from the glue or any burnt wood that's left over. That second pass kind of vaporizes it. So I was a little leery about doing that because I was worried that it would cut into the inlay, but
Mhm.
it if as long as your laser is accurate, the belts are tight, you shouldn't have a
Yeah.
problem.
Okay. Okay. Um, I was going to ask you something else, and then it just promptly said, I don't remember what it was. Never anyway. Pete Boone wants to know, how do you like the final product of the laser inlay compared to the V-carve inlays?
The same. It's just a different way of doing things, you know. I would never do a cutting board, you know, image on a cutting board using the laser. What it has its place. So for the laser inlays, is I can do small stuff, very detailed stuff. It's just like on my logo. I've done an inlay of the entire logo that was 1 inch in diameter. And if you're familiar with my logo, it's a tree, the tree of life. You can even see the leaves on the tree at a 1 inch diameter, you know, total. You'd never get that kind of detail off of a V-carve inlay on the CNC machine. So it's no different than me. I'm just as equally excited about making both. You know, it just has, each one has a different place.
I just had a flash in my brain. You said you would never do one on a cutting board. I'm thinking to myself, oh, that would be cool to put on the bottom of the cutting board logo with.
There's an idea.
Something
There's
like
an idea.
that.
Yeah, there's an
Stand
idea.
out from the crowd.
The only difficulty with doing the laser inlays is getting the inlay lined up in the pocket, because the V-carve inlays are easy because they're a 1/4 inch deep. The inlays are a 1/4 inch tall, and it's like you can muscle it around. Do you feel it go pop? But because the veneer is so thin, you know, matter of fact, I use again, I keep bringing my logo up, but I've got 2 dots on each side of the circle. That's what I use to line up the inlay, because I can feel those pop in, and then I can smooth everything out. And this is what I'm leery about this current project that I'm doing, and I'm wanting to do those inlays on the side. I'm worried that they're going to fail because I'm not going to be able to line them up just right, because my idea is to do some that's going to be, you know, 10, 15 inches long. I've got to figure out a way how to line them up, because I'm telling you, when you get the glue sop down on there and you lay it on there, and because of the tape, you're guessing, it's all by feel, you know, to make sure that you've got everything in tight. So that's really the only difficulty of doing larger inlays on the laser, is you're not 100% sure if you've got them lined up or not till it's all over with, unless you've got, like I was saying, the dots on my logo. That's pretty much a telltale that I've got it locked in right. But if I can figure out some way, you know, a no-brainer way to make sure they're lined up, then obviously that would eliminate that problem. But right now, and I say this all because if I release my video and you don't see any laser inlays in it, that's why, because they failed on me because I couldn't get them lined up properly.
Okay. I remembered what I was going to ask. Do you use paper-backed veneer or not?
I'd use good old, good. Okay. Yeah, I've tried it, and you're talking about it's got the adhesive on one side.
No, just the paper backing. There's some veneers come with a paper backing to make it easier to glue up to the substrate.
I know what you're saying. No,
some are just bare. They have no.
Yeah, this is bare veneer. This is just good old fashioned veneer. I've tried some of the veneer that has the adhesive on it, and the glue residue causes some issues. And so I started buying just the plain veneer, and this worked great. So
okay. All right. Kimberly Went says, working secret alignment pins in your design. Smart. Yes.
She actually asked a question above that one, Mark.
I was going to get to that. And that's next, as a matter of fact. Do you find the included inlay toolpath in Vectric reliable or too generic? And I'm smiling because you did a video on this.
Kimberly, I'm assuming that she's talking about the new V-carve inlay.
V-inlay, yes.
Yeah, the V-inlay. I'm not a fan, Kimberly. Mark knows about this. I'm apprehensive because I know Mark works very close with Vectric. I don't want to say anything that might cast him in a bad light, but I think there needs to be some more thought put into it. I have used it. I have tried it, and it works. It does work. But there's just way too many steps. And plus I'm so used to using the regular V-carve inlay, it's just quicker for me to do. I think by the Vetric has figured out a way for where the software would do the math for you, and I think that's an awesome thing. But it's just the workflow in it is just it's just too tedious for me. I pointed one thing in particular, if anybody's curious, if you've used it before, when you have your image and you hit some hit the to create the tool path, it creates the base cut tool path and the inlay tool path. Well, for any reason, if you have to make any edit and you go, oh, I needed to do this or change this depth of cut or whatever, if you change that base, it's not going to update the inlay side. And so you have to do both. Or what I have done is just completely delete the inlay tool path and start from scratch. And so it ends up being several extra steps than you need to if you just created a good old fashioned V-carve inlay,
Yeah.
V-carve tool path. So my thoughts on it, it's a wonderful concept. And I think that down the road, if they rethink it and tweak it and polish it a little bit, I think it'll be a beautiful thing. But right now, I'm just not a fan. Hope
Yeah,
that answered your question.
It does need some work. It does the math correctly, but there are some things missing. And but also you have to remember what you're doing and what most of the folks doing wooden cutting boards are doing. There's two things that a lot of people don't talk about. You're doing deeper inlays. If you looked at all of Vectric's inlay videos using their tool paths, they're using 90-degree V-bits or 60-degree V-bits, and they're doing side grain and face grain. You're using what, a 15-degree or 10-degree bit?
But actually the one I have, I think this is a side angle, but it's a 5-degree actually. So I think it ends up
Okay,
being
that's
around
the
10
side
degree.
angle.
Yeah, 10 degrees. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're not doing 1/8 thick inlays. You're doing 3/8 inch thick inlays, 3/8 to a half, anywhere in there.
A quarter to 3/8. I do
Or
on
3/8.
average. I do more of a quarter-inch depth, but I have done deeper. But quarter-inch has been enough for my uses. So,
But you're
um,
not going to get that detail on edge grain or face grain with a 90-degree V-bit.
you're not going to get it anywhere. Even in ingrain. The reason being is because I think is it a 30-degree is as small as a true V bit will go. That ain't that.
15.
Is it 15?
15. Yeah.
Are they making a 15 now?
Oh, there's a bunch of manufacturers making 15s.
I didn't even know that. Well,
Oh, yeah.
I need to shut up then because I'm not.
Let me grab
I've
them.
had blinders on the last couple of years, and I've been loyal to these particular types of bits, and I didn't even realize that they were making narrower V bits now. That opens up a lot of great possibilities. Once you get down to a 15-degree, then that's that ain't no slouch. I mean, you can do some pretty detailed stuff with a 15-degree.
And now I can't find it, of course. There it is. All right. Let me make it all about me here. This is an Amana 15-degree V-bit. And brother, that looks like a hypodermic. And
I actually,
it will lacerate you.
I actually have one of those. Forgive me. I personally don't consider that a V-bit. But I have used it. It's weak. I broke mine
do not use a touch plate.
Yeah. I give up on that pretty quick. And forgive me, that is indeed a V-bit. It comes to an infinite point, right? If
yes,
memory
it does.
serves.
Yes, it does.
But matter of fact, they don't even build that as a V-bit, do they? Don't they call that an engraving
yes,
bit?
no, it's a V-bit. It does have the infinite point. It does have
I bought years ago to test it out, and I broke it. I'm like, I'll give up on it pretty quick. And I've always stuck with the taper ball nose. So forgive me, I'm not up on the latest and greatest.
And this is another 15-degree V-bit that is straight fluted. And the same thing, The only problem is that has a 6 millimeter shank, so you need a 6 millimeter column.
Now, I have some of those. Are you 100% sure that's not an engraving bit? Because it does have a flat tip on it.
Yes, but it is, the tip on this is 5 thousandths. That's the width is 5 thousandths. And I have that pirate epoxy inlay video I did was cut with this bit.
Okay.
And you will get nice square corners, the whole thing. Oh yeah. But and it was like $18 for 3 of them on Amazon.
Yeah, they're super cheap. They're super cheap.
Yes. Kimberly has a new experience yesterday. She said she's bleeding just looking at those. They bite. They bite hard, they bite deep, and they don't care. Get a tetanus booster if you're going to start playing with 15-degree V-bits. You mentioned the other thing, and that is that you're working in end grain.
Mm-hmm.
You have to work in end grain if you want detail, correct?
You can get the detail out of side grain, but it's you're going to test your patience. It's difficult to keep any type of cut, from tearing out. When you're getting those really small details, they can be done, but you've got to cut them slow. And several times, like your depth of cut's got to be minuscule and work down to whatever depths you want, because I've done some side grain inlays, and it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. End grain is just so forgiving.
Yes.
I've been a fan of end grain anyway, because I just like the patterns that you can create with them, but
same here.
Yeah. I think Browenwood did a couple of side grain projects, and I remember seeing him talk down in the comments that it's pretty tedious, big margin for error.
Now, there's a lot of cutting on table saw and gluing up and, gluing up panels and all this other good stuff when you're working with end grain. But it is, to me, it's real satisfying. And I just like it. I mean, I'm making another cutting board right back there as we speak, and I enjoy working with the end grain. I really do. And having the CNC routers surfacing that big panel flat is just, it's a snap. It really is. You don't have to worry about trying to send it through a planer or anything like that.
I bought a planer several years ago before I really had my big CNC now, and that planer, I don't even know if it works anymore. It takes a little longer on the CNC, but it's a lot less messy. It's not as loud, and in my opinion, it's more accurate. I get it.
If I've got a lot to do, I'll pull out the planer and use it. But basically, I call the planer the eraser. And that's what, if I make a mistake, it goes through the planer and I don't have to worry about it no more.
Right.
If at first you don't succeed, eliminate the evidence of the attempt. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
So now Bob Heltebridle is wondering, is that aluminum tape flexible enough to slightly roll that inlay into place?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, you've got to be careful. When I put it on the bed of the laser, I actually had to put some weight on the edge of it, because just the heat of the laser, it'll curl it up into a potato chip.
Oh really?
The aluminum, I don't know what to compare it to. Of course, it's far thicker than a gum wrapper, but it has enough rigidity that you can lay it out flat, but you could ball it up like you could a gum wrapper. It's that thin, but it's perfect. Whoever thought it up was a genius. That was a perfect thing for those kind of things. So
now you were talking about, and this is me thinking here, but I've never done it, so I don't know if this is a mistake or what. But instead of laying down one piece of aluminum tape, what if you laid two pieces parallel with a slight gap in the middle so that you could see through it to see how you were placing that inlay? Would that do any good or no?
You could, depending on what the image is. Like my little logo, it has so many small parts on it that would hang out and open. I
Okay, that was a thought.
I think that it would fail there. Not to mention, a beauty of the tape is if you've got your inlay completely covered, when you glue it up, it kind of contains the glue from. I mean, it may squeeze out on the edge. If you had it open in the center, you really wouldn't have a way of clamping it down and without getting glue on what you're clamping it to, which would glue it to the inlay. Yeah. So good idea though, Mark.
Hey, I just kind of popped into my mind. Well, wait a minute. What if you did, never mind. Okay. Let's see. Pete Bune says, I have problems with the tips on the 15-degree V-bit breaking off. Everybody does. Everybody does.
Mark, it's worth mentioning while I have everybody, excuse me, while I have everybody's attention, I get more emails on feeds and speeds. That's probably the biggest question I get. When you're doing inlays, you got to throw the feeds and speeds chart out the window, and you've got to consider that bit that you're using more of a assumable than you ever have before, because the odds of you breaking it go up exponentially from doing the inlays. But to guard against that, you've got to slow your feeds and not necessarily the speeds. I generally still run a 14 or 16,000 RPM on my bits, but I will slow them down sometimes at 20 inches a minute. If I'm going through some dense wood, which you would never do, if you were just making an ordinary cut. So this was about the trial and error thing. Did I use the feeds and the speeds the bit manufacturer made, and I was breaking bits. And so the only thing I knew to do was to slow it down some.
Yeah.
Well, I did that, but then sometimes I was still breaking them because now I was overheating a bit, so I had to slow the speed down. And I found this happy medium of about 14,000 RPM and anywhere from 20 to 30 inches per minute. And I've had good luck with that. So,
yeah. Yes. And that's what, when you mentioned it, trial and error and the school of hard knocks on your own, you have to try it in scrap. And I know it's a cliche to say that, but if that means glue up a bunch of ugly soft maple ingrain panels, surface them flat, and then play around with it, so be it. I mean, you've got to try it, because the feeds and speeds that you're using may not be right for the next guy using a different brand of bit.
I got an email from a guy once who was asking me about the second most asked question is my bit settings. And he was asking me my bit settings, and he said that he was fixing to do a project. And he had just bought $200 worth of black walnut and maple. And I'm like, dear God, please, man, cut in some scrap before you cut into this. And he didn't. He jumped right in. He said he was making something for a charity auction that was the next weekend, and he had to get it done. And sure enough, mistakes were made, and I ended up giving him my phone number. And so he's on, I don't know where he lived, I can't remember, but I ended up talking to this guy, a super nice guy, smart guy, very smart guy. And we figured out the problem, or at least how to fix it, which, by the way, half the battle of being good at something is how well you cover your mistakes, so
exactly.
I gave him some tips on how to fix the problem, and it ended up being pretty nice, but I learned a hard lesson right then. I'm very careful. If people seem like I'm apprehensive to help, it's not because I'm trying to be an ass. I promise you, is that I'm scared to death that they're going to jump in this head first into something and spend more money than they need. And I surely don't want to be the guy that influence that,
I'm with you. It's real easy to get in over your head real fast.
Yeah.
And that's probably the hardest lesson for any woodworker to learn, is that it's okay to say no. If especially if it's something you have never done before. I know there's a big push to say, well, never say no, because that's how you develop your skills. That's also how you get in a lot of trouble real fast and waste a customer's money, because you either don't have the right equipment or you don't have the knowledge. I'm all for pushing yourself to gain more knowledge and more wisdom and more skills. But in a situation like you're talking about with a charity auction a week away and you've never done this before, that's a recipe for disaster.
And it was a complicated. He had 2 or 3 species of wood in there. It was like this
Yeah.
cartoon scene, and I'm like, man, you really need to back out of this. I said, you need to cut a couple pieces of pine or some MDF before you go jumping into this, because it wasn't crazy detailed, but there was enough detail in it that I was just worried he had. Number one, was it going to make the charity auction? Number two, he'd waste a ton of money on hardwood, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was a nervous wreck. And in the spirit of what I said a while ago, is that I want to be a resource for folks just starting out, because I struggled to find the information that I wanted and needed to be able to do these inlays. I want to be that guy, one of the guys that helps out. But at the same time, like I mentioned, I don't want to come across as apprehensive, because I do want to help. But man, I've run across some folks that, they need to wait a little while. They need to make some coasters, cut out a few circles and squares before they jump into detailed deep inlays like that. So
yeah, I mean, you can't start at the top. You cannot start at the top.
right.
You have to work your way into it. And in fact, I did a video. It's one of my most popular videos too. It's been several years back now. It was in the old shop, titled 5 Things I Wish Beginning CNCers Would Stop Doing. And one of them was diving in over your head. They want to just, I got my CNC. I put it together yesterday and I got my lumber. How do I make a guitar? And it's like, that's not a beginner's project. You need to do some projects, learn the machine, and learn your limitations and your abilities as well.
Absolutely.
That's not a beginner's project. So,
well, we live in a society of instant gratification these days. I blame Walmart. Walmart has changed the scape of the world, and it all started with no questions asked returns. That was unheard of 20 years ago. But half jokingly, half serious, if you think about it, they have changed retail over the years, because now everybody has to do that, because that's what everybody expects.
Right.
And now with technology, you've got the internet. You used to have to load up, take a day trip to the library and hunt for the book on the information. Now it's just, 10 seconds away. We're carrying around, something in our pocket that can give us instant access to the world. Not to mention all these other technological wonders that can do things for us that we could ordinarily not do alone back in the Stone Ages. So everybody wants to go from step 1 to step 100 right then.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you blame Walmart. I start out by blaming Sears, because I think that's where they got the idea.
Yeah, well, Craftsman Tools, you're right.
Yeah. Now, this one is kind of Brooks Martin is asking, can you show Scott the pic I sent you about the glue gaps? Okay. Yes, I can. Here is the picture that he sent me. This was an attempt at a V inlay, which I think is pretty cool. Obviously, it's a striped bass. But when you look in here, he's got these gaps going on, and quite a few of them, as a matter of fact. He says, in the email, I'd be interested in Scott's thoughts on these glue gaps. They're small and can be filled with some thin tight bond, which is basically a Band-Aid. What are your thoughts?
My knee-jerk reaction, one of two things are going on here. The inlay is either too deep for the pocket, and so it's bottoming out before it has a time of seat on the edge. That's again, this is kind of when you blow it up, it gets kind of grainy.
Yeah.
Or that's tear out. That's one of the two. This is obviously side grain, right?
This is
end grain. It's in grain. I see it now. Did you blow it out? Yeah.
Yeah, this is a cherry cookie. I'm not sure what this is. I don't know if that's face grain. That looks like face grain, and that may.
Well, I was I was going to say that too. That goes back to what we talked about earlier about which one is easier to do, the side grain, face grain, or the end grain. When you start cutting little things like that, you've got a 90% chance of failure cutting that out of side grain, you know, whereas the end grain would be, it's poplar end grain, he says.
Okay,
So it is end grain.
Okay.
If it's not tear out, the first thing I would check to make sure is that it's not bottoming out in the pocket. Which I'm questioning that because he has some that looks like that they've connected really well.
Yeah, but he's also got gaps around the outside edges too.
Well, okay. That's my first thought is that
So,
when in some of my videos, I've talked about how your stepper travel is important. One thing I discovered years ago, I was using these crazy settings, on my particular settings for an inlay that I've mentioned before is I'll use a 1/4 of an inch start depth and a 10,000ths of an inch flat depth. And it wasn't easy to come to that. And there were times where, depending on what machine I was using, like especially on my Shapeoko, it was all belt driven back in the day. And there were some times where I would find that my start depth needed to be, 0.3 inches. And then there's some, I could do another project and 0.3 inches not work. And I have to back it off to 0.2 inches. It was just all over the place when I discovered it was the belts that was causing me the problems. On this Onefinity machine, I think on the video that you pointed out a while ago, the ship and well, I have down in the description that my start depth is 0.27 inches. And now if I list my settings as 0.25 inches, and I actually had somebody ask me that the other day, why did you change it? I said, quite honestly, I didn't advertise this, but I had to change my spindle out. My spindle died. And so I put a new spindle on my machine. I actually had this back before my Onefinity, so I put a different spindle on it. And for laughs, I recalibrated my Z travel. And then after doing a couple of tests, I realized at 0.25, I was probably closer to being dead on the Z than I ever was before. And so 0.25 gave me the target that I wanted, whereas before 0.27 is. So now with all that mess being said, Brooks, I question maybe your stepper travel. That may be an issue because you got to think your pocket and the inlay are mirror images of each other. If it's not cutting them evenly, then you could have that problem as well. If you're not questioning your bit settings.
Yeah, and Greg from STL Woodworking just popped in, and because Brooks was asking, is it the bit geometry? And Greg mentioned should be the same geometry because you should be using the same bit.
Absolutely.
For the negative as well as the plug. You should be using the same bit.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. Yeah, if you're using a different bit for your inlays and your pockets, there's your problem.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I'm scared to death if I break a bit in the middle of a project that I get the same brand and size bit. If it's going to be off a little bit, am I grabbing a bit that some guy made 5 o'clock on a Friday and he was in a hurry, get out of there? Is it going to be off a little bit and it's going to throw my project off? But
yeah, because remember, all of those side angles and included angles are nominal.
Right.
Indeed. If you check your 90-degree V bits, very few of them are actually 90 degrees.
Oh, indeed.
Anywhere from 87 to 92.
And in truth, I don't say this, and I probably shouldn't say it now, but your bit settings, they matter. Of course they matter, but they're not as crucial as a lot of folks think they are. Your depths are, but the geometry that you've entered in your bits, because you just nailed it. If you've got a 10-degree bit, but then you turn around and change it in the settings to 12 degrees or 8 degrees, it's still going to cut the same. It really is. As far as the outcome of the inlay, I mean, you may have some honky shape or something that's not accurate, but at least you're going to make a perfect mirror image of it, and it's going to glue up right. So
Yeah.
Yeah, your machine settings are crucial.
Mhm.
The vector editing, the video, that's really, it comes to mind, the two biggest things to me that are
Yeah.
most important.
And calibrate your axes, your X, your Y, and
Absolutely.
your Z.
Make sure
If
it's
you
square.
if you don't know how to do that, get a hold of your machine manufacturer and ask them how to calibrate the X, the Y, and the Z.
Yeah,
Because
it's
if you're telling it to move an inch, it needs to move an inch,
exactly.
not 1.01, not 99.9. It needs to move 1 inch.
That's right.
So,
And it needs
uh,
to make sure it's square too. I mean, it ain't got to be down to the the thousandth of an inch, but it needs to be
mhm,
pretty close because, again, these are mirror images. If your machine is skewed and you cut out your pocket this way, well, then you're going to flip that inlay the exact opposite and cut it. And because
mhm,
they're both skewed, they're not going to fit into each other.
yeah,
Even simple shapes.
yeah,
So
yeah. Now, Ellen asked, do you adjust your plunge rate for those? I guess I'm guessing for the smaller tipped bits.
I slow it down just because I slow the feeds down. It is important. And here's the thing: on the inlay, the plug side of the cut, you're doing that incredible, plunge with using a quarter. At least my settings, I use a 1/4 inch start depth. It's going straight into a 1/4 inch. There's no step down using the V carve inlay.
Mhm.
Which, by the way, that is a plus that I noticed on the V carve inlay toolpath, is that it does step down on the inlay cuts. Have you noticed that in using it?
I haven't been using it yet, but I'm getting ready
Yeah.
to. I've had other things I've had to do, so I've
That
not
is
been
a
able to get
huge
into it.
plus. If I'm going to give it any compliments, I know I said I wasn't a fan of it. Is that it recognizes the depth of cut that you have in the bit settings when
Mhm.
cutting the plug out, so it doesn't plunge straight down on that. So that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
But using a regular V carve tool path, if you
yeah,
put a
it'll.
1/4 inch plunge rate, it's going straight down.
Yeah,
So your plunge rate uh it is indeed important. You don't want it going too fast, So I think my plunge on the bits that I use when I have it set for the slow feeds, I think I match the plunge rate to whatever the feed is.
mhm,
So they're 20, 30, 40 inches. I don't go faster than 40 inches a minute on any inlay that I do. So I may have them all set at 40 inches a minute. I'd
yeah.
have to look.
Okay, okay. Um, see the oh, I was going to ask you about something, then I totally forgot. I got to looking at the questions coming in. Sorry about that. Oh, do remember. I do remember what I was going to uh, ask, and that was you mentioned that this could very well also be tear out. Now, when Brooks mentioned it was poplar, I went, aha. I
Well,
have found poplar to be one of the more difficult woods to cut because it does like to string up and chip out real easy.
poplar's really, it's not a very dense wood. So,
No.
and what made me think it could be tear out is if you do look at the area, can you zoom in a little bit again, Mark? If you look at those areas are kind of ragged,
Hmm.
that they're not clean,
No.
like what you see the circles of the pocket is. It looks like the
Yeah.
inlays are a little ragged on the edges. So that's what led me to think it might be tear out.
Yeah. And if you look, you've got a grain line running this way right here. And these are tearing out in basically the same position on these plugs. There's a few exceptions, but you've got a lot of them right along the bottom of these plugs.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me wonder what, you know, if there was something in that poplar that kept it from machining right. And if that isn't chip out, poplar is not easy to carve. It's very
Mm-hmm.
light, it's very soft, but that's its downfall is it's so damn soft. It is
Mhm.
one of the softer hardwoods, one of the
You
softest hardwoods.
you can cut soft hardwood. He said he did his ingrain. Another question, and this is way down on the list of culprits, but how old's the bit?
Yeah,
It's one thing I've learned is when to recognize when your bit gets dull. You
yeah.
know, if it's not cutting super cleanly, chunk it. You know, I
Yeah.
have quite literally. I buy my bits. I won't call it in bulk, but I'll generally buy them at 5, 10 at a time to
Mhm.
have them ready. Because when I start seeing the little ragged edges, I don't question it. I throw it in the trash right then and there because it just saves you a lot of headache down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. It's cheap. Yeah, I really do understand, but a lot of it is false economy in that um it's cheaper to if you're just going down to Home Depot or Lowe's, it's cheaper to go over into the Project Woods and buy you a chunk of red oak. At least it's a hardwood.
Mhm.
I mean, it's
Oak
gonna
inlays
give you
beautifully,
better.
by the way. It's
It
it's it's right up there with maple and black walnut to me. Oak is perfect density for inlays.
red oak or white oak, or does
Either
it matter? Either.
either.
Okay.
Yeah. I know they're a little different densities, but they're both in that window that
Yeah.
they're awesome.
Now, poplar is usually cheaper, but
And
I mean, if you're
it's
going to
so
go through three
soft.
times, yeah, if you're going to go through three times as much poplar as is it false economy? I mean, yeah, I can pay $20 for this board, or I can pay $10 for that board, but if I got to buy three of them to get what I want, what's really cheaper?
Well, I
You
bet
know?
Brooks would be willing to pay somebody $10 to wave their hand over that inlay and heal it.
Mm-hmm.
So that extra $10 at the beginning, and I say that jokingly, Brooks. I know,
Heal.
but I say that from my own experience. I
Yeah.
have gone the cheap route at the beginning, and when it was done and over with, and it didn't
Mhm.
meet my expectations, I said, "Shit, I would have paid somebody $50 to make that work."
Really?
Yeah, for it to turn out right. I should have
uh,
just paid it to begin with. So
yeah. Yeah. I'm having this fantasy in my brain of the guy down in the basement holding one end of a pipe and another end of another pipe with water gushing out of both, screaming, "Hurry up!" as his wife is on her way down to the hardware store to get his
right,
cap.
that's right,
It's like that's why plumbers are around.
that's right.
Okay. Let's see, got a couple of more questions here. Kimberly threw this in. It's crazy to recarve the fish and try with a different wood inlay.
I've done that. If
Um,
if you if you trust your machine is accurate, and especially if you're like it's just like the way I've got my bed designed, the repeatability on it, I'm pretty confident of. If you can put that back in the same exact spot, and your origin, your zero hasn't been changed, you should be able to cut out that inlay and put it in again. I have done that successfully.
you show that in this video.
Yeah, indeed. Though I didn't cut out the whole inlay, admittedly, but I
No,
did. I did cut out a piece of it. Yeah, you're
you cut
absolutely
out a
right.
section where you got some chip out. You cut out
Yeah,
a section that was bad and replaced it. So, yeah, no. In answer to your question, Kimberly, no, it's not crazy. So, let's see. We got a couple of more questions here. Alan Williamson is asking, sorry if this has already been mentioned, but what laser do you use?
Alan, I was blessed. I received a sponsorship from Monport Laser several months ago, and I have their 130-watt CO2. And it's a man. It's a good laser. I know it's along the same series. It comes across the other side of the planet, and depending on what our future holds, we may not be seeing stuff from China here in the future, but I think highly of it. It's actually a very well made machine. It's as good as some of the other domestic brands. I have some friends with some really nice domestic lasers, and I'd put mine up with theirs. So I'm proud of it. I'm grateful for it.
Mm, okay. Okay. And Michael Ludwig wants to know, have you ever tried clear transfer tape for your laser inlays?
You're going to, one thing I love about the aluminum tape is that you're going to have to burn completely through that inlay. And that's the beauty of the aluminum, is the aluminum stays intact. If you were to use tape, it would vaporize it, and then you'd kind of be
Stuck.
SOL. Yeah.
Yeah, thought that was, I was going to say, and again, I have zero experience with any of this. I thought that was the purpose of the metallic tape, was so the laser didn't burn through it.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess technically you could burn through it and it would still be successful. And it may be something that helps out with my little issue of getting it lined up. But like I said, I can't just emphasize how awesome it is, and why I use it is for the teeny tiny stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I can't imagine, even if the transfer tape, which is obviously a lot more flexible, you know, it would be like trying to take a piece of Scotch tape and put it, you know, surgically put it somewhere. That aluminum tape is just awesome.
Yeah,
it really is.
I will put a link to that Trotec video down in the description of this live stream as soon as we're done, because it really is good. I don't even have a laser, and I've watched it a couple times.
It's very well done. Yeah, it's very innovative, I thought. Pretty sharp. Kimberly, I see your question. I guess you saw the cat earlier. He's the inside cat. He'd probably be scared to death of a mouse. My mousers are outside. I have shop cats, and they're brutal. Yeah, they keep my pride. I've got 10 acres here. I haven't seen a varmint around here for a long time. So
my aunt had a cat that somebody says, "Oh, was that a mouser?" The only way that cat would catch a mouse is if he fell on it.
Yeah, you know? Yeah. He's spoiled rotten. That's my girlfriend's cat. She takes good care of him. So
I was wondering what was going on. I must have been looking over here at the other page, because
I saw him. I know what she's talking about. He was walking behind me, and he's fat. He's kind of got a waddle to him. You know, that's about as fast as he moves. So
okay. Let's see here. I'm not seeing any more questions. So I do want to ask, though, do you have any particular aesthetic that really attracts you, like a rustic style or arts and crafts or something like that? Is it something that makes you stand up and go, "Oh, wait a minute, that looks pretty cool"? Or is there just a certain aesthetic you try to go for?
I like geometric shapes. I don't like squares too much. I like nice rounded stuff, you know. I know that really doesn't narrow it down to a specific, but I have been so wide open to trying new things. You know, it's funny. I could probably say that my projects over the course of the last 7 or 8 years have equaled into the hundreds at least. I'm making a cutting board now. I haven't kept count, but I think I'm in the high 20s of inlaid cutting boards now. What I've made, I have never made the same thing twice, ever. And I honestly don't have anything for myself other than the hammer. The video that I made of the hammers, I made myself a hammer. That's the only thing I've got to prove that I can make anything out of wood, because I either sell it or give everything away. I don't care to sell anything, because now I find myself in a manufacturing type position where now I'm facing some sort of redundancy, you know, or repetition rather. And repetition is not my friend. That's why I don't even exercise. I can't stand doing the same thing twice. So other than the plaques that you've seen me make, which I believe Brooks asked how the charity work was going.
Yeah, that was next.
I've made a ton of those plaques, and they've actually been changed up a little bit. But my girlfriend Mel, she's the one that's really the one that is involved in that. She's part of some organization. One is Free International and Called to Rescue, And if you haven't seen the video where I mentioned this, if you've ever seen the movie Sound of Freedom, that's what she does. She finds missing kids, kids that have been sex trafficked, helps rescue them. She's part of a large group of people that does that. She's an analyst for the organization. Uh, it's probably the most honorable thing that I've ever seen anybody do, and I'm really proud of her for it. As a matter of fact, she got back. I went and picked her up from the airport last night because she just got back from a week in Las Vegas, where they call it a big search, and they I think found 8 kids, and
wow.
have got a couple of bad guys put in jail. So, but
Wow.
yeah, so I'm proud of her for what she does. It's I didn't realize until her and I started dating, and she opened up this world. I'll sit and listen to her Zoom meetings, and she talks with the rest of her organization, and when they're planning these big searches, and they will tell the stories of these kids. They know what kids they want before they go, and so they have a bio of each kid and what they have gone through. And I won't mention it here, but
Sure.
it will absolutely break your heart into 100 million pieces. I was, I guess, naive. I did not think that humans could do this to each other, especially a child. And so that makes what she does even more incredible to me. And what little I do of making plaques, it doesn't even scratch the surface of what I would hope that the resources that they have available to them to get this horrible, nasty, dirty job done. So
I mean, um, I mean, what do you say to that? I mean, other than God bless her and the organization.
yeah. Well, and
And
I've mentioned in my videos, you can donate to these places. But even if you don't have the time or the resources, just watching my videos, the revenue, what little revenue I'll make, I pledge 10% of whatever I make to them, to help keep them going. And in truth, I've come out of pocket more, and Melanie, Melanie, it's all volunteers.
Sure.
It's a nonprofit. So, more Melanie than me, obviously, but she's come out of pocket a huge amount to help provide resources for these guys. So,
Well, yeah. Jim Brown, tell her thank you
I will.
from me as well. That should be on Netflix now. What was the name of the movie again?
Sound of Freedom.
This,
I'll warn you, it is graphic. I was a little surprised of how graphic it is, and when I say graphic, how obvious. A lot of times, if you see any mainstream movie, if there's bad guys doing bad things, that's kind of ambiguous. This is not ambiguous. You know exactly what in the hell's going on, and that is it'll shock you. And from my understanding, through Mel's contacts, deadly accurate. The movie is. I mean, there's no, it hasn't been Hollywooded up as much as you might think. It's all pretty accurate. So if you watch it, prepare for it to change your life. I promise you, it's an excellent movie. As far as having a message in it, it's got a very powerful message.
Wow. Well, I think one more question, then we'll end on that. Because where do you go from there? I mean,
well, I hope I didn't bring down the
no, absolutely not. And in fact, quite the opposite.
Blame it on Brooks. He asked the question.
Well, I think Brooks is used to having things blamed on him.
Right.
But, I don't know. What can I say?
Yes, Kim,
is the aluminum that you use as tacky as the aluminum tape used for ducts?
Actually, I think it's the same stuff.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, the adhesive on it it's pretty good. Matter of fact, I mentioned running 2 passes. I run 2 passes to take out whatever residue is left, and 90% of the time it's the adhesive that's on the tape.
You using that 3M aluminum tape?
It looks familiar, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it's it can be pretty gummy, and I was amazed to find out there's a winter time. If you're going to be applying this in the winter time, there's a special tape that you use because the adhesive is less sensitive to cold. I don't know. Weird to me. Who knew? Okay. Yes. Is Melanie the M in M&S?
Yeah.
She is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, she is. Yeah.
So she got first billing.
Pretty much. I
Okay. Well,
go without saying.
yeah, as it should be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Women rule the world, man. We're just living in it.
I hear you. I hear you. Okay. Before we wrap up, let me ask you, what was the one question I didn't ask you that I should have?
I'm a Scorpio. I don't know.
That has got to be the most original answer I have heard yet. Uh, well, babe, I asked that because a lot of times folks have something that they want to talk about, but I don't know. So I ask them,
Oh, you're asking me.
yeah, what's the
Oh,
one
I
question I should have asked you that
oh, I
I
see. I'm so
didn't?
sorry. I misunderstood you. I can't think of anything, man. But you've asked some pretty intuitive questions. I appreciate them. You didn't ask me anything I couldn't answer. At least I hope I did. At least I sounded like an authority. Um, I hope that everything I said makes sense. I'm not the best at applying what goes on up here. When it comes out here, it's usually dyslexic, but that's always my biggest struggle is trying to make folks understand the train wreck that's going on up here. So I hope I was clear and answered questions. So
Well, if folks want to get more of you, they can certainly go to your YouTube channel, which I've linked down in the description. They can go over to the Instagram that I've linked down in the description. Is there some place else that you want to send them to, or is that it?
we've got a page on Facebook. It's about like
Okay.
Instagram, and we try to. But again, Melanie, she handles all that. She's the publicist for our
Mhm.
little thing we got going on. I just concentrate on the videos and making stuff. So but yeah, if you view the videos, I deeply appreciate it. Like I said, uh, it not only helps me, but it also helps organizations that we support.
Okay.
So
Okay. Um, Alan Williamson, can you post a link to Scott's laser? I will ask Scott for a link to it. And if he can get it to me, I will put it in the description.
yeah, but it's Monport, Alan. It's Monport. Matter of fact, little shameless plug here. If you use MS Woodworks, you get 10% off of whatever you buy too. So
And I was going to put all that down in the
yeah,
description. So we'll put I'll get his
okay,
link and we'll put it, the discount code and the whole ding dong thing.
perfect.
How's that sound? All
Love it.
right. All right. Well, Scott, thank you for taking the time and spending part of your Sunday with me. I want to do this more often. Hopefully, you didn't have the kind of experience that would make you say, "Oh, hell no," if I ask you to come back.
No, shoot, no. Well, I give credit to you, man. You make it comfortable. You know, admittedly, there was a little bit of nervousness about it, but
Mhm.
you make the environment very pleasing to be in. So kudos to you.
This is just two neighbors hanging over the back fence with a glass of iced tea, BSing,
That's
and
right.
talking about stuff that they got in common. So, alrighty. Let's see. Channel members, today is the deadline for your challenge pictures. And to get in on what, tomorrow is the what. And I got to be a little more cryptic because why. I need your submissions, your entries by 11:59 Pacific time tonight. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you must be present tomorrow. So hit the community tab for the link to tomorrow's members only live stream. See you there. You must be present. And next Sunday, I think we're going to go ahead and do an open Q&A. And that way we can get everybody's Vectric questions asked and answered and what have you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you want information on how to become a channel member, you'll see a little join down here below this video panel somewhere. Click on that. Another panel will pop up and a video will play. I'll tell you all about channel membership. We have a great group of people. We have the super secret Facebook group and a private chat and the whole thing. We have an absolute blast. And some of these people are just absolute artists. I don't know what the heck they think they need me for, but I mean, they're killing me. Other than that, thank you again, Scott. Y'all hit Scott's channel over there on the YouTubes and over there on the Instagrams. Give him a follow. And I'll see you next week. Y'all take care.